Welcome to this other video that I'm going to explain to you how to go about doing a problem like this. You feel what I'm saying? It's freestyle from the dome. Tell me what you needed to get it, man, you know. Alright, well, let's get started, okay? Now look, we need to do a problem like this, and you're going to notice this is a funky equation, right? It's x to the third minus 1, and I give you the root as 1. So first but not least, if the root is 1, that means that we want to write it in factored form, that's going to be x minus 1. Okay? Now the biggest thing for us to try to figure out how to do is we're trying to figure out how in the world do we write this in factored form. We want to take this and write it in factored form, right? So we begin the process just like we did on the other videos and use long division. So we get x minus, actually I'll write it down over here. So we're going to get, let's see, x minus 1, all right, and put this all underneath here, x to the third. Now this is the thing, right? Our equation was x to the third minus 1. And so when we go do a problem like this, we got to put placeholders. And what I mean by placeholders is we don't have an x squared in there and we don't have an x, right? We just get x to the third minus 1. So when we're doing problems like this or any other problem that you encounter, we want to put placeholders. So we're just going to put 0x squared plus 1x, 0x. We're just putting placeholders. And then minus 1. And that's going to help us organize our work, all right? So I'm going to put this little bracket over here, and we just start off. X times what gives me x to the third power? Well, that's definitely got to be x squared. So we know we're going to put x squared here. Okay, well, x times x squared, we did that already. That's just going to be x to the third. Then negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Alright, now just like before, right, this is plus, this is going to become minus, this is negative, so we're going to flip the signs on it. And so we're going to get x to the third minus x to the third, and that literally is going to be 0. Over here, we're just going to get x squared, right? And now we just drop everything down, and I'm going to continue to drop everything, including the placeholder. It's just going to help organize our work a bit. Okay, so now I'll write it over here. X times what gives me x squared? Well, that's nice because, well, guess what? That's just going to be x. Boom, bada boom, bada boom. So now we write plus x. And now we proceed. Well, what's x times x? Well, sure enough, that is x squared. And negative 1 times x is, well, sure enough, just going to be negative x. Like before, we flip the signs on a minus, plus, and then we proceed to do the problem. Well, this is going to be 0. This is going to give me x, and then we're going to get minus 1. Oh, that should be green. So we're going to get x minus 1. Okay. Now we ask ourselves, put it over here, x times what gives you x? Well, guess what? That's just going to be 1. So we get plus 1. So x times 1. Well, that's just going to be x. And negative 1 times 1 is going to give me negative 1. Now we just flip the signs on these and boom, boom, we're going to get a remainder of 0. All right? So now we can go ahead and conclude, all right, the x minus 1 times this gives me this original equation. So x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1, right? This is all equal to x to the third minus 1. If you want to, you can reconvert it and figure it out for yourself, right? But we want to turn this all into factored form. Well, we know, I'll write all the factors of 1. And that's just 1 times 1, right? And this is a problem because, well, 1 plus 1 is 2. There's no way for us to add or subtract 1s, right, to get us a 1 right there. So that kind of sucks because this problem is not factorable. What this means is we're going to have to use a different skill, a different technique to help us turn this into factored form. Now, one of the ways that we can do that is by using what we call the quadratic formula. All right, and it's kind of a tedious process, but, you know, it's going to help us to identify. So we always try factoring. And if factoring doesn't work, then we go straight to the quadratic formula, right? And it's a little bit trickier because it's going to give us our roots, and then we got to turn those into factors. So let's go ahead and do this. This is a is equal to, well, this is just like a 1 in front of x squared, so 1. B is equal to 1 because there's like an invisible 1 in front of x. And we're going to get c is equal to 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this problem. We're going to get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared, which is just 1, minus 4 times 1 times 1. Well, that's just 4 times 1 times 1 is just 4, so there's going to be 1 minus 4, all divided by 2 times 1. Well, 2 times 1 is just 2, okay? So I am kind of doing this rather quickly, so I do apologize. If you're a little confused, just go ahead and ask me in class and I'll help you out. This is going to be x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 all divided by 2, which is equal to negative 1 over 2 plus the square root of negative 3 over 2. And then this is going to become 0.5, negative 0.5, plus, well, there's a negative inside the square root. Now this is kind of the same thing as the square root of negative 1 times 3. And remember, this is the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 3. So we can say that this is I square root of 3. We're just pulling out that negative. We're getting complex roots, imaginary roots. And so we're going to get I square root of 3 all divided by 2. Right? Oh, don't forget our plus or minus here. Okay? So what this means, well, now that we got this here, is that our roots are x equals 0.5, negative 0.5 plus I square root of 3 divided by 2. And we're going to get x is equal to negative 0.5 minus I square root of 3 over 2. And up above here, we already had one of the roots, right? Well, we have one of the factors, which that means that this root is 1. So now we have all three and we can write it in factored form. Now that we have all three, right? Well, we have originally x minus 1. That was the one we started with. And we're writing with factors. If this is my roots, remember when I'm writing it into factored form, it's going to be the opposite, right? So we're going to get x. Well, this is negative 0.5. This is going to be plus 0.5. And then this is plus I square root of 3 over 2. This is going to be minus I square root of 3 over 2. And now we go to proceed to do the next one. All right, well, we're going to get x. This is a negative 0.5, so that's going to be plus 0.5. And this is negative minus I square root of 3 over 2, so there's going to be plus I square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and you can see this problem, the factored form equation is this right here. You can see it's kind of a tedious problem. It's kind of complicated because you get imaginary numbers, which is I, complex roots, and we have to write it in factored form. All right, so hopefully this video helps you how to deal with the placeholders, and most importantly, a little bit of review on Q4, which is irrational and complex roots.